He trekked home in worn-out sneakers while she sped past in a stranger's Lamborghini, laughing at the boy she once called her future. She had no idea that the broke salesman she humiliated owned the dealership, the company, and secrets that would soon bring her entire world crashing down to its knees. The sun hadn't fully risen over the city when Jeff pulled his beat-up Honda into the staff parking lot behind the Lamborghini showroom, 3 blocks away from where he usually parked his actual cars. The ones with his name on the ownership papers, locked away in a private garage nobody outside his accountant and his lawyer knew existed. He killed the engine and sat there for a moment, staring at his reflection in the rearview mirror. 20 years old, a degree finished with honors that most people his age were still chasing. And here he was, about to clip on a name tag that read, Jeff Sales Associate, preparing to spend another day pretending he didn't own the building he was walking into. It had started as curiosity, a simple question that wouldn't leave him alone. If I stripped away the money, the cars, the businesses, would anyone still want me? He hadn't expected the answer to hurt this much. Inside, he tied the lanyard around his neck, smoothed down his black polo with the golden bull stitched over his heart, and walked onto the showroom floor like every other employee punching a clock, answering to a manager who, unbeknownst to the staff, answered to him. By 9 a.m., the showroom doors opened, and the city's wealthy began trickling in, the way they always did, to look, to dream, to occasionally buy. Jasmine had told her mother she was meeting friends for brunch. She wasn't. She was at Jeff's apartment, if you could call it that. A modest 1-bedroom above a laundromat, the kind of place her mother would refuse to let her shoes touch. You don't have to keep coming here, Jeff said, handing her a cup of coffee he'd made on a stove with one working burner. Your mom's going to find out eventually. Let her find out. Jasmine wrapped her hands around the mug, looking at him the way she always did when it was just the two of them, like he was enough. I don't care what she thinks. But she did care. Jeff could see it in the way she still checked her phone every few minutes, the way she still flinched whenever a car backfired outside. Terrified her brother had followed her. 6 months. That's how long they'd been together. 6 months of secret visits, of Jeff showing up to her family's gated estate only to be turned away by security before he even reached the door. Mrs. Adeyemi doesn't want him here. Her brother Toby had barked at the guards just last week, loud enough for the entire street to hear. Tell the church rat to go back to wherever he crawled from. Church rat. That's what they called him. A boy who supposedly had nothing but borrowed suits and empty promises. Jeff never argued. He never once pulled out a card that would shut them all up instantly. He simply turned around and walked away, jaw tight, dignity intact, secrets sealed. Jasmine's mother, Mrs. Adeyemi, sat in her marble-floored living room that evening, sipping wine with a contemptuous edge to her voice. A car salesman, Jasmine. My daughter is dating a car salesman. She said the words like they tasted bitter. Do you know what people will say at the country club? Do you know what your father would have said? He's not just a salesman, Mom. He's brilliant. He graduated top of his class. He's building something. Building what? Exactly. Toby cut in, lounging on the leather sofa with the casual cruelty only a favored son could afford. Dreams don't pay for weddings, Jasmine. Dreams don't buy houses. You need a man who's already arrived, not one still trying to find the bus stop. It was around this time that Jason re-entered the picture. Smooth, polished, 22 years old, freshly appointed as a manager at one of the city's top finance firms. He'd known Jasmine back in university, had always liked her, had simply waited for the right moment. He arrived at the Adeyemi estate in a Navy Mercedes AMG, wearing a watch that cost more than Jeff's entire yearly rent, carrying himself with the easy confidence of a man who had never once been turned away at a gate. Jason. Mrs. Adeyemi rose immediately, all warmth and open arms. Look how well you've done for yourself. Just working hard, ma'am. He flashed a smile that made Toby grin and nod approvingly. Actually, I wanted to share something. I've set a 10-year plan. I'm going to own a 2026 Lamborghini. Already started saving. The room lit up like he'd announced a marriage proposal. A Lamborghini, Mrs. Adeyemi repeated, eyes glittering. Now that's a man with vision. Jasmine, sitting quietly in the corner, said nothing. But something in her chest twisted. The dealership, the Gold Bull logo, the boy in the black polo shirt she visited in secret. She thought of Jeff's apartment above the laundromat and Jason's gleaming Mercedes parked outside her gate, and for the first time, doubt crept in like a slow poison. She didn't yet know that the boy she was beginning to doubt could buy 10 Lamborghinis without blinking. She didn't know anything yet, but she was about to make a decision that would haunt her for the rest of her life. If you were Jasmine in this moment, torn between a man who loves you quietly with nothing to show for it, and a man your family adores with everything to prove it, what would influence your decision more? Loyalty to love or pressure from family? Drop your thoughts in the comments. The breakup didn't happen all at once. It happened in small cuts, the way most heartbreaks do. A missed call here, a shorter visit there, a sentence left unfinished because Jasmine couldn't quite look him in the eye anymore. Jeff noticed. Of course he noticed. He'd built businesses by reading rooms, reading people, reading the silence between words. And the silence between him and Jasmine had grown loud enough to drown out everything else. "You've been distant," he said one evening, sitting across from her on the small balcony of his apartment, the city skyline glittering in the distance, a skyline that included 3 buildings he quietly owned shares in. Jasmine wrapped her arms around herself, staring at her hands instead of him. "My mom keeps asking when you're going to actually become something, Jeff. Toby keeps bringing up Jason. Everyone keeps comparing me to a man who just started chasing a Lamborghini," Jeff said softly, "while you've been sitting in passenger seats of cars I could buy outright, watching me wear the same 3 shirts on rotation, and you still don't ask me why." "Why would I need to ask? You're a salesman, Jeff. You sell other men's dreams for a paycheck. That's not a mystery. That's just reality." Her voice cracked, not from cruelty, but exhaustion. "I'm tired of living in your maybe. Your someday. Your trust me, it'll work out. I need something real, something I can actually touch." "Everything will be fine," he said, the same words he'd repeated for 6 months. Words that had once sounded like comfort and now sounded, even to his own ears, like a man pleading for more time he didn't need. He could have ended it right there. One sentence, one bank statement, one phone call to his lawyer. He said nothing. "I can't keep living in your illusion," Jasmine whispered, standing, gathering her purse with trembling hands. "I need someone who can give me the life I deserve." She left without looking back. Jeff sat on that balcony until the sky turned from orange to black, his coffee going cold beside him, the city lights blinking like they were laughing at him too. Jason didn't waste a single day. Within 2 weeks, Jasmine was riding in his Mercedes AMG, then a GLE coupe he'd leased to test drive the family car life, as he jokingly told her mother, who practically wept with joy at the suggestion. He took her to rooftop restaurants, showed her his 5-year financial projections like they were love letters, walked her through his 10-year plan to own that 2026 Lamborghini with the precision of a man pitching investors. "In 10 years, he told her one night, swirling wine in a glass that cost more than Jeff's monthly rent. "I'll have it, the black one, maybe the orange. Whichever drops first, you'll be sitting right there in the passenger seat." Jasmine smiled, picturing it, the car, the photos, the life. It was everything Jeff had promised in words and never delivered in metal and leather and horsepower. Mrs. Adeyemi couldn't stop talking about Jason at every gathering. Toby called him the real deal. The family that once slammed gates in Jeff's face now opened their dining room, their holidays, their hearts to a man with a plan and a Mercedes to prove he was serious about it. It was a Tuesday evening, humid and gray, the kind of day that made the 3-mile walk home from the dealership feel even longer than it already was. Jeff trekked the familiar route past the overpass, past the bus stop where teenagers loitered, past the corner store where he sometimes bought a bottle of water he didn't need, just to feel like a normal 20-year-old buying something small with his own 2 hands, the way he used to before money complicated everything. That's when the GLE coupe slowed beside him. The window rolled down. Jasmine's laughter spilled out first, sharp and bright, before her face even appeared. "Jeff," she called out, leaning slightly across Jason's lap to get a better look. "Is that you? Trekking in this heat?" Jason leaned forward too, smirking, one hand draped lazily over the steering wheel. "Long day at the dealership, champ? Selling other men's dreams again?" Jasmine's laugh deepened. Cruel now, stripped of any warmth that once lived there. "You told me about dreams you can't even think of living, Jeff. How does it feel walking while we drive? How does it feel watching everything you wanted slip right past you?" Jeff stopped walking. He looked at her. Really looked. searching for any trace of the girl who once sat barefoot in his small apartment, sipping coffee from a chipped mug, telling him she didn't care what her mother thought. She wasn't there anymore. In her place was someone who traded patience for polish, love for leather seats, and him for a man with a plan on paper. "Take care of yourself, Jasmine," was all he said. The window rolled up, the GLE sped off, taillights fading into the evening traffic, their laughter trailing behind like smoke. Jeff stood there a moment longer than he needed to, hands in his pockets, watching the car disappear around the corner. Then he smiled. Small, quiet, almost sad. Soon, he thought, very soon, all of this comes full circle. He had no idea just how soon that circle would close, or how spectacularly it would happen right there on the showroom floor, where every single one of them would stand humbled, face to face with the truth. Jasmine mocked Jeff for dreaming while she rode in another man's car, but she had no idea who he really was. Do you think people are too quick to judge someone's worth based on what they see in the moment, rather than who that person might truly be? Share your thoughts in the comments. 10 years can feel like a lifetime when you're chasing a single dream. For Jason, every one of those years had been measured in spreadsheets, bonuses, and quiet sacrifices. Skipped vacations, modest apartments, a car he kept 3 years longer than he wanted to, all so that one day he could walk into a Lamborghini dealership and walk out a different man. That day had finally come. He'd called Jasmine the night before, voice trembling with the kind of excitement only 10 years of discipline could produce. "It's happening," he told her. "Tomorrow. The 2026 Huracan. We're finally getting it." Jasmine, now engaged to him, screamed with joy, loud enough that her mother came running from the kitchen. Mrs. Adeyemi clutched her chest like she'd just heard royal wedding news. Even Toby, usually unmoved by anything short of his own success, pulled out his phone to brag to friends before the car had even left the showroom floor. That night, Jason sat alone in his apartment, surrounded by the evidence of 10 years of restraint. A corkboard on the wall held printouts of every Lamborghini model he'd ever wanted, color swatches from car magazines, and a faded photograph of himself at 22 standing outside this very dealership, pointing at a car he couldn't yet afford. Pinned beside it was a spreadsheet, printed and laminated, tracking 10 years of savings down to the dollar. Birthdays skipped, vacations declined, a car kept 3 years past its warranty. Every difference funneled into an account he'd promised himself he'd only touch for this. He ran his thumb over the photograph one last time before sliding it into his jacket pocket. Tomorrow, he told himself, he wouldn't need it anymore. Tomorrow, the proof would be parked in his driveway, not pinned to a corkboard. He didn't sleep much that night. He kept replaying the conversation with the loan officer in his head, the numbers, the math he'd checked and rechecked 100 times. He had no way of knowing that somewhere across the city, in a modest apartment above a laundromat, sat a man whose net worth made his decade of sacrifice look like pocket change. A man who, in less than 12 hours, would either save the proudest moment of his life or watch it collapse in front of everyone he loved. The next morning, the entire family piled into Jason's Mercedes. Mrs. Adeyemi in her finest cream blazer, Toby in a suit 2 sizes too tight with confidence, Jasmine glowing in a white dress that made her look every bit the woman who'd made the right choice. At the Adeyemi estate, the morning had moved like a celebration already underway. Mrs. Adeyemi had laid out 3 outfits before settling on the cream blazer, insisting the color would photograph well for the family album. Toby had paced the hallway with his phone glued to his ear, already narrating the purchase to friends who hadn't even confirmed they cared. "My sister's fiancé," he kept saying, stretching the words out like they tasted good in his mouth, "is picking up a Huracan today." Yeah, today. Jasmine had dressed slowly, distracted until her hand brushed against the bottom drawer of her vanity, the one she never opened in front of anyone. Inside, beneath folded scarves she rarely wore, sat a single photograph, her and Jeff on his apartment balcony, her bare feet tucked under her, his arm around her shoulders, both of them laughing at something neither of them could remember anymore. She didn't know why she'd kept it. She told herself it was an oversight, nothing more, a photo she'd simply forgotten to delete. But her thumb lingered over his face a moment too long before she shut the drawer and reached for her white dress instead, smoothing it down like armor. They arrived at the dealership just as the sun caught the glass windows, turning the gold Lamborghini Bull logo into something almost blinding, and that's when they saw him. Jeff, standing at the entrance in his black polo, the same lanyard around his neck, the same Jeff Sales Associate tag pinned to his chest, looking exactly like the broke boy they'd spent years mocking. The laughter started immediately. "Oh, this is too good," Toby said, doubling over. "He's still here? Still selling cars he'll never afford?" Mrs. Adeyemi pressed a manicured hand to her mouth, shaking with amusement. "Some people just never rise above their station, Jasmine. Look at him." Jasmine didn't laugh as hard as the others. Something about seeing him, steady, composed, unaffected by their mockery, made her stomach tighten uncomfortably. But she said nothing, letting Jason wrap an arm around her waist as they walked inside. Near the entrance, a young sales associate named Priya nearly dropped her tablet when she recognized the family being led in by Jeff himself. She'd only worked at the dealership 8 months, long after Jeff had quietly taken his post on the floor, and in that time, she'd learned exactly one rule above all others. Never underestimate the quiet one in the black polo. She caught Mr. Reynolds's eye across the room and gave the smallest nod, the kind reserved for moments everyone in the building had been waiting for without quite knowing it. Even the security guard stationed near the glass doors recognized Toby the instant he walked in, though Toby never looked twice at him. Months earlier, that same guard had stood at the gate of the Adeyemi estate, following Toby's barked orders to turn Jeff away. He hadn't known then that the man he was told to call a church rat signed his paycheck twice a month. He knew now. He said nothing, only adjusted his cap and watched the scene unfold with the patience of a man who understood, better than anyone in that room, exactly how this story would end. Well, Jason approached Jeff with a smug grin, extending a hand he knew Jeff couldn't refuse to shake without seeming petty. "Still here, champ. Guess some of us climb and some of us just stay." Jeff shook his hand calmly. "Welcome back. Here for the hurricane?" 10 years of saving," Jason said proudly, loud enough for the entire showroom to hear. "Drive it home today." Jeff smiled politely and led them through the paperwork, the financing details, the final transfer, every motion practiced, professional, betraying absolutely nothing. Then came the number. The finance officer cleared his throat, scanning the screen twice to be sure. "Mr. Jason, there's a shortfall. You're $50,000 short of the total amount required for the purchase." The room went silent. Jason's confident smile cracked at the edges. "That can't be right. I calculated this for months. Interest rate adjustments and the new luxury import tax took effect this quarter," the officer explained gently. "I'm sorry, sir, but without the additional $50,000, we can't release the vehicle today." Mrs. Adeyemi's face fell. Toby's grin vanished entirely. Jasmine looked between her fiancé and the car she'd dreamed of for years, watching it slip away in real time. Jason's hands trembled as he pulled out his phone, dialing his bank with the urgency that only comes once or twice in a lifetime. "There has to be a mistake," he said into the receiver, pacing near the finance desk while the family watched. "I've had this account for 10 years. I planned for this." But the voice on the other end only confirmed what the finance officer had already said. The new import tax had landed 2 weeks earlier than projected, eating directly into the cushion he'd built with such precision. Toby leaned toward his mother, voice lowered, but not low enough. "Maybe we should just go." "This is embarrassing." Mrs. Adeyemi's lips pressed into a thin line, her earlier joy curdling into something closer to humiliation dressed up as concern. Jasmine, for her part, said nothing at all. She simply watched Jason's composure crack in real time, 10 years suddenly looking less like proof of a plan and more like a man who'd built his entire identity around a single number and missed it by $50,000. And then Jeff spoke. "Take the car." Everyone turned. "I'll cover the difference," Jeff continued, voice calm, unwavering. "Take it home today, Jason. Don't let 10 years of work end in an empty parking lot." For a moment, nobody moved. Then Toby burst out laughing, sharp and disbelieving. "You? Cover $50,000? With what your sales commission from this month?" Jasmine's mother joined in, shaking her head. "Jeff, sweetheart, this isn't charity hour. Some dreams aren't yours to fix." Jeff didn't flinch. He simply turned toward the back office and called out a single name. "Mr. Reynolds, could you come out here, please?" The dealership's general manager emerged immediately, adjusting his tie, nodding respectfully toward Jeff before addressing the stunned family. "For those of you who don't know," Mr. Reynolds began, voice steady and clear enough to silence the entire showroom, "Jeff isn't just a sales associate here. He's the founder and sole owner of this dealership and 12 others like it across 3 states. He's been working the floor personally for the past several months, observing operations firsthand. Every decision in this building, every car on this floor ultimately answers to him. He's been on this floor since spring, Reynolds continued, glancing around the showroom, the small crowd of customers and staff who had quietly stopped what they were doing to listen. Not as an investor checking numbers from a boardroom, on the floor, parking 3 blocks away every morning so no one would recognize his car, clocking in like everyone else. I tried to talk him out of it more than once. He told me he needed to see with his own eyes who people really were when they thought no one important was watching. A few feet away, Priya pressed her lips together, fighting a smile she knew wasn't hers to show. The security guard near the door simply crossed his arms, satisfaction written plainly across a face that had said nothing for months. The silence that followed was the loudest sound any of them had ever heard. Mrs. Adeyemi's wine-red lipstick parted around words that refused to come. Toby's phone slipped slightly in his frozen grip. Jason stared at Jeff like he was seeing a stranger wearing a familiar face. And Jasmine simply stood there, hand over her mouth, eyes glistening with the realization of exactly what she'd thrown away, mocked, and walked past while trekking home laughing in someone else's car. Jasmine started, voice barely a whisper. "You let us believe. I let you show me who you really were," Jeff said gently. No anger in his voice, only quiet clarity. Money changes how people are treated. I needed to know how I'd be treated without it. He turned back to Jason, extending his hand once more. The offer still stands. Take the car. Consider the $50,000 a gift. Not because you deserve it, but because I refuse to let what you went through change who I choose to be. Jason, humbled beyond words, could only nod, his pride and gratitude tangled together in a way he'd never experienced before. Jeff addressed the room one final time, his voice carrying the weight of everything he'd witnessed in the past several months. Treat people well, not because of what they can give you, but because you never truly know what they're capable of giving. Humility isn't weakness. It's the truest test of character, and too many of you failed it, long before you ever knew my name. Toby was the first to move, stepping forward with the practiced charm of a man used to talking his way out of consequences. Jeff, man, listen, if there's ever an opportunity at one of your locations, I'd love to. He stopped himself when Jeff simply looked at him, no anger in his expression, only the same quiet clarity he'd offered the entire room. Toby's mouth closed. For the first time in his life, he had nothing left to say. Mrs. Adeyemi reached for Jeff's arm as he turned to leave, her rings catching the showroom light. "Jeff, sweetheart, surely we can put all of this behind us. Family is family." Jeff looked down at her hand on his sleeve, then, gently, without unkindness, stepped back out of her reach. "You only just learned my name had value, Mrs. Adeyemi. Don't confuse that with learning mine." Jasmine caught up to him near the office hallway, voice low enough that only he could hear it. "Did you ever love me, or was I just part of the experiment?" For the first time since the family had walked through the door, something flickered across Jeff's composed expression. Not anger, something closer to grief. "I loved you before any of this started," he said quietly. That part was never the test. He didn't say anything else. He didn't need to. The look on her face told him she finally understood. Exactly what she'd traded away and exactly why no amount of money could buy it back. Jeff walked back toward his office, the showroom slowly returning to its usual hum behind him, keys jingling, finance papers shuffling, a stunned family trying to figure out how to leave a building they no longer recognized. Weeks later, the story had already spread through 3 social circles before anyone official said a word. Photos from the showroom floor, a video someone's cousin had filmed on a phone, captions guessing at numbers nobody could confirm. Jason kept the Huracan, true to Jeff's word, though he never quite enjoyed driving it the way he'd imagined for 10 years. Some debts, it turned out, weighed heavier once they were paid. Jasmine moved out of her mother's estate that spring, into a small apartment 2 neighborhoods over, the kind with 1 working stove burner and no security gate at all. She wasn't sure why she chose it. She told herself it was about saving for the wedding. She didn't examine the thought any further than that. As for Jeff, the lanyard came off for good the following Monday. He still drives past that dealership sometimes. Now, behind the wheel of a car nobody would dare to mock. Not because he needs anyone to see it, but because hiding never changed, say, who he was in the first place. It only ever proved who everyone else was. It's a strange kind of math that wealth reveals character faster than years ever could. Some people spend their whole lives waiting for proof of what someone is worth, never realizing the proof was standing in front of them the entire time, wearing a lanyard, walking 3 miles home, asking for nothing. If wealth had never entered the picture at all, if Jeff really had been nothing more than a sales associate his whole life, would Jasmine's family's behavior still have been justified? Does how we treat people who seem to have nothing to offer tell us everything we need to know about who we really are? Let us know in the comments below and subscribe for more stories